Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is round number 3 of the season, coming to you today from Snetterton. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Adam Thompson. And now, Adam, based off the fact that you're still recovering from the flu, I feel like I'll be yapping your ear off throughout most of this show. So before we move any further, I would like to say, may God have mercy on you and the viewers' souls. But ready to get things up and rolling for what's going to be a really good race, running on the 200 layout of Snetterton, skipping out on that infield section with the ultra long run down the Bentley straightaway. So there's going to be a really good race. We've also got some weather to talk about, as you can see in the back of shot. But I think before we move on anymore, we'll talk about the championship point standings, because we do already have 2 races on the board, and it's Krishka Banka, who already has a win this season, that coming just 1 week ago at Brands Hatch. He's currently your championship leader in the Spec 1 category, 194 points on the board. Ian Joyner, though, those 2 cars separated by only 34 points at the moment, separated by only 1 with their card numbers, and only separated by 1 position as well. Joyner and Kabanka looking to try and be the championship contenders all throughout this season, but Thortulo in third may be a little bit of a spoiler in that class championship fight. Moving on now to Spec 2, and it's Esteban Lorenzo in the 295 car, currently in the championship lead, 137 points on the board right now. Fernando Afonso finds himself in second still. He was leading the championship after the first round. However, after a somewhat disappointing race meeting at Brands Hatch, he finds himself in P2. Jeff Jacobson rounding out your top 3 in the Spec 2 category. Moving on to Masters, and York Monty has been pretty dominant thus far. Already has 2 victories on the board thus far this season at Silverstone and Brands Hatch. So to continue this UK sweep, finds himself in the championship lead over Antonio Reese and series admin Stevie Ray. But it's Antonio Reese currently on the provisional pole at the moment, 11 minutes into this qualifying session, group qualifying, as usually is a staple here in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, and running around a track which is going to be rain-soaked. I'll invoke a little bit of terminology as we see a crash heading through involving Jorg Mani. That was heading through bomb hole of turn number 6. But Adam, I'm going to let you get a word in edgewise here in a couple of moments and invoke a little bit of terminology from the Rudskogen race from last season. We've got the Formula Ford boats running here today, and they're going to be motoring around the puddles.
Yes, they are, and there are quite a few puddles already that we've seen forming on this track through practice. And another thing I wanted to talk about before we go on board here with Jorg Mani, we're going to cover him for an onboard lap whenever he decides to get back out on track. It's funny, I went to him, and he ran right over somebody. But anyways, what was I saying, Ron? Something about puddles. Oh, yeah, how much this is that the rain has changed up the standings. Antonio Reese obviously doing a great job, but Kevin Adrian is up there. We know how good he is in the rain and sitting up there in second place right now.
Yeah, that is a very good lap time, but still a little bit more time left to go for these drivers to set in some good times. Look at S&B's very own Josh Wilkie jumping his way up into 5th. That is a very good time. Let's see if he can improve. It's had a pretty rough start to this season, has Josh, but the driver, the number 23, looking to try and impress. Still got a whole lot of races left to go throughout this season, 10, including this one that we have here today. But we've got some really intriguing stuff to talk about here for this third race of the season. Got the weather to talk about and a really fun track as well. Riding on board with Jorg Mani, sliding his way around the final corner, going on to the start-finish straightaway. One of the longest around this racetrack, which really only has 2 straightaways at all, but this is one of them. That start-finish straightaway, cutting the beam right now and heading your way off into turn number 1, trying to pick your way through the spray to figure out the best line through here, which in the wet weather can be oh so difficult. Sliding your way through the corner and trying to avoid the grass and the curb on the outside line, which will be like a slip and slide. There's a hairpin turn number 2 of Montreal. Going to be a pretty good overtaking opportunity, but you need to get that done with authority because you got that turn number 3 right afterwards. Usually on the 300, the full layout of this track, that's a really good overtaking opportunity. But even on this shortened layout, I think that may be a good opportunity. Still, this is a Bentley straightaway, the longest flat-out blast around this lap, but it doesn't last forever. Gonna be heading under that Snetterton bridge into Brundle of turn number 4, shortly followed by Nelson of 5. You can see that killer curb on the inside. That's not even a curb, that is an urban plateau. You hit that and you're gonna find yourself in low Earth orbit. This is Bomb Hole turn number 6, it being a track in the UK, probably built on some old runways used by the RAF back in the day. The British race fans decided to just build a racetrack around a hole in the earth from a bomb during World War II. Gotta love the British race fans. That's turn number 6 of Coram that we just saw Jorg Mani go through, and that's turn number 8 of Murray's, a really hard corner to try and get right, doubly so in these wet conditions. It's a wet and wild ride around Snetterton, but it's going to be fast-paced around this 2-mile track with only 8 corners. I don't know about you, Adam, but I really think this is going to be possibly the most exciting race we've seen thus far.
I think it's going to be a good one, obviously, in these Formula Fords too, especially with there's not being that many hard braking zones. Well, I'm sorry, there are going to be quite a few hard braking zones. Most of these corners are just hard braking zones with a lot of draft in between those corners. So there are chances for this to turn into one of the best races we've seen all season. Maybe in the past couple seasons. And with that being said, with the rain too, there could be quite a few fireworks going off. I have a sneaky suspicion that some of these drivers, just like that, whoever that was in that Lotus livery going around, some of these drivers, if they get it wrong and they're in a pack, it's going to cause absolute mayhem.
I dare to even imagine how the run through turns 2 and 3 is going to be at the very beginning of this 40-minute race that we have coming up, because that will be terrifying. I've covered some races around this track in the past and all sorts of different machinery, and have it be known that that section, it's back and forth. It's one corner followed immediately by another, and that sort of section, especially at the beginning of these races, can prove to be a perilous one. But one driver certainly dealing with these perilous conditions better than anyone else at the moment is Kevin Adrian in that number 10 car, currently on the provisional pole as it stands at a 1:23.845. Antonio Risto slot in second, Ian Joyner in third. Thortulo, who I briefly mentioned when we were going over the Spec 1 standings, finds himself third in the points in the Spec 1 category. He is the reigning champion from the Formula V Weekend Warriors here on SMB. As we see a big crash a little bit farther in the back, that's coming out of turn number 1 of Riches, I believe is the name of that bend. Riches doesn't really seem like a fun name. If you go off that track and have a big off-track moment, you're going to find yourself in a wheat field. So I guess Field of Wheat Bend would probably be the corner name that I would prefer. And that right there is a very good reason why no one has ever allowed me to name any sort of corners on any sort of racetrack all across the globe.
I think that's a pretty good reason why, Ron, that they really don't ask you to do any types of corner names, or for example, euphemisms or sayings, because falling anvils in not too distant future would be plastered on every damn billboard we have up here in the United States.
That was a call out. Brad Cathcart jumping his way up into 10th, just at a 1 minute 24.996. Following through Tulo, though, the point that I was going to raise in reference to Tulo, he is a driver who is brilliantly quick. He's a UK-based driver, was living in Japan not terribly long ago, originally born in the US. He's a little bit of an enigma in terms of what country he should represent, but he is not an enigma out there on the racetrack. He is brilliantly fast, and that's a big crash coming out of turn number 1. That I think may have been Trent Kramer, who's currently qualified in 9th in the 20 car. See, there he is. There's Trent Kramer, moments before disaster, heading his way through turn number 1, which may be the hardest corner for these drivers to circumnavigate all throughout this race. Hit that puddle and bang into the wall.
Yep, that's he's not going to be able to take that thing around back to the pits, is he?
Yeah, no, that thing is ready for the scrap heap. So Trent Kramer, thankfully the iRacing mechanics always wired on copious amounts of Red Bull, so they will be able to repair that car come time for the 40-minute race that we have coming up, but still got a tick under 8 minutes, not 8 minutes, a tick under 2 minutes left to go in this session with 18 minutes on the board, and Kevin Adrian going for a style slide, heading through turn number 2. All these corners I feel like are going to be tough. Turn 1, we've already seen some drivers go off through there. Turn 1, lap 1, that is going to be a sight to behold. But one thing that we haven't mentioned thus far in this broadcast, Adam, is talking about the pits. Of course, in that 40-minute race that we have coming up, even with the weather, a pit stop is mandatory. So these racers have to think about that at some point. And of all the tracks, Snetterton is not one where you want to have a mistake on pit entry or even come out of the pits altogether, because pit exit is terrifying when you have a pack of cars coming up to you in the spray. But the pit entry as well, that is a terrifying ride. And if you get a little bit wrong, you could find yourself Austin Powers sandwiched between some barriers on pit lane.
Yeah, so let's see here if we can get a look here kind of at the pit entry. Yeah, kind of. Right here, you can see how you're coming in. You're going to be coming off the track. And it doesn't look that bad from this angle, Ron, but I'm telling you right now, when you're coming in, the road's wet, you're trying to get slowed down, and you've got a bunch of drivers coming in. Look at how skinny it gets very, very quickly. I mean, they can't even put both cones on the ground. They have to have one of the cones on the wall because it wouldn't allow enough width for the cars to get through on the pits.
There's only one thing that pops into my mind when I see those cones on pit lane. You pick the high cone and I pick the low cone. That is it. I mean, Rose speaks volumes about the way the pit entry is around this track, considering we're going to be visiting so many UK-based racetracks. We've been staying in the UK all season long ever since this season started a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to be staying in the UK for quite a long time. Silverstone and Brands Hatch holding races already. Snetterton here today, Oulton Park, Thruxton, Donington Park, Cadwell Park. Then we're finally going to be breaking out the UK with Okayama, but that race isn't going to be until February. So these drivers, I hope they get used to these UK tracks, which all have some, they have some similar characteristics in terms of the homegrown feel of a lot of them. But at the same time, some of these tracks just have their own unique twists and turns to them that always keep these drivers on their toes.
Speaking of twist and turn and drivers on toes, my goodness, Boris Espen has absolutely just threw in a flyer of a lap, went from 13th up into 8th position. Obviously, a Spec 2 driver. We got that wrong last week, so Chris Montgomery was leading in the Spec 2, or was on provisional pole for his class, and has just fallen down the order. Guido Marzucci, Jeff Jacobson, and Daniel Verone have all pipped him. Chris Montgomery now back in 19th.
One thing that we didn't really mention during that qualifying session is trying to find a good opportunity to get a lap in without a whole lot of spray and a whole lot of traffic to deal with. Have it be known that even though that spray is going up into the air, it can still affect your grip at their on-track. The amount of times that I've been in an iRacing race and slip in behind a driver in front of me in the rain and just have a real tough time keeping that thing on the road would beggar belief. Maybe I'm just not a good driver, who knows? But these drivers certainly are, but they're bringing this qualifying session to a close. That's Jesus Rodriguez, currently qualified in 20th, finds himself at a 1 minute 25.591. So about a second and a half off of Adrian, who is looking to be our pole sitter unless we have a killer final lap from either this man, Jason Green, or Daniel Tufts, who's still out there on the circuit at the moment. But this is going to be just about the grid that we have for this 40-minute race that we have coming up. But it's 40 minutes of racing action. We've got some pit stops to worry about as well. As much as it may be set in stone, the grid, that is not going to convert into how things are going to be for the race.
No, I have a sneaky suspicion things are going to change quite a bit here during the race, just depending on how much rain. I've looked at the forecast a little bit, and the chance of rain, it's going to be raining the whole time. It's just the severity of the rain, I think, Ron, is what we're going to have to keep an eye out for, and if it gets any worse than it already is right now. But quickly here, we do have your grid. Kevin Adrian coming home, or starting the race in first place, with Antonio Reese starting first and Masters second, lining right up next to Kevin Adrian. So that's going to be a great run down into turn one. Ian Joyner, Thor Tulo, second row. Jorg Monty and Michael McConnell in the third row. Joshua Wilkie starting in seventh. Boris Essman, the first S2 driver, starting next to him in eighth place. Soren Garrettson, ninth, with Daniel Tufts sitting in 10th place. Where am I? Trenton Kramer in 11th, and Jason Green starting in 12th.
And then looking outside the top 12, we've got Alan DeGassis making up an all-Masters row 7 with Brad Cathcart, the Aussie, starting alongside Chris Murakami, going to be starting in 15th. Daniel Verone, a fellow PA native like myself, he's going to be starting in 16th. Jeff Jacobson in 17th. Guido Marzucchi in P18. Chris Montgomery in the 313 car, going to be starting this race in the 19th spot. And then we have Jesus Rodriguez rounding out your top 20. Rob Johnson in the 466 car, the driver from Bulgaria, who I believe may be making his Weekend Warriors debut, but either way, he's going to be starting this race in 21st. Next to a man who's certainly not making his Weekend Warriors debut, that being Jim Brewster. John Toms going to be starting in 24th, and Jeff Wubker starting this race in the 24th starting spot. Only have a few more starters to go through here, and some of them are going to include Paul Jackson in 25th, Andrew Love in P26th, Tyler Hagan, the American, in the 499 and 27th, Adam Bradshaw in 28th, Edward Buchanan starting this race in 29th, Arthur Lorero in 30th, Nick Tulo in 31st, and rounding out your 32 cars set to be in this race. I'm not sure how many of them will be grabbing the green, though, is going to be Russ Telker. Buchanan, Lorero, Tulo, and Telker, I don't believe, have taken to the grid for this formation lap, so may end up having just 28 starters. I say just 28 starters. 28 Formula Ford race cars barreling around this track, only 2 miles long, in conditions like this. That's still a terrifying prospect. I don't know about you, Adam, but I am very happy that we're in the warm and dry commentary booth instead of these cold and wet race cars.
Yes, me too. I can tell you I am extremely happy to be up here right now. Now, with that being said, Ron, it looks like there are still definitely puddles on the track, as you can see from Kevin Adrian's onboard here, but it looks like the rain may have calmed down just a little bit. I don't know if it's going to stay like that, but it definitely has been raining harder than it is right now.
Yeah, I'm looking through at the iRacing weather radar, and bearing in mind, folks, if it's truly realistic, it will bear the same sort of fruit that regular weather radars and weather forecasts do, and it will be absolutely inaccurate. Looking through, though, it looks like we're just towards the end of this batch of rain. The track's certainly not going to dry come time for the end of this 40-minute race, but we will have to worry about changing conditions and the track having a seesaw effect in terms of how wet versus how dry it really is. But ready to get things up and rolling from the third race of this season. The field down the hands of our pole sitter, Kevin Adrian. The green flag is down. The drivers are on their way, and it's the spray and the mist goes up in the air, and some drivers already go off the track farther in the back. It's Adrian leading over Antonio Reese, some side-by-side racing involving Joyner and Tulo. Those two battling for P2 at the moment. Tulo going to get that move done to slip his way up into third. Yorick Monty already running in fifth. Some side-by-side racing involving Tufts and Wilkie for P7. And look at Boris Estman, the leader in the Spec 2 category, getting involved in that, but he's now got a challenge on his hands with Soren Garrett, the Belgian, around his outside through turn number 2. Not close enough to get that move done through turn 2 into turn 3, but going on to the Bentley straightaway for the first time. Looks like most of the field has gotten through the first few corners of this race surprisingly smooth. Looking at the front, though, some drivers still going side by side.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Ron. Now we're just going to have, my gosh, look at that camera view coming underneath the bridge there. Just a bunch of Formula Fords. Everybody keeping it in line, doing a great job. A little bit of a stack up there. That looks like that was Jeff Jacobson involved in that with Chris Mirakami. Everyone seemed to get away with that okay, but we might have a shakeup here. Joshua Wilkie falling through the field.
Wilkie possibly, yeah, there you can see him rejoining the racetrack, coming out of the turn number 4 and 5 section of Brundle and Nelson. That chicane, one of the clunkiest chicanes in the racing world. I have never for the life of me figured out the right line through there, and I think Wilkie may have gotten hit by that falling icicle. Let's see what happened to the driver of the number 23 car. Maybe a little bit of contact. It was contact. It was actually hanging through bomb hole. My apologies. Wilkie going off the track. He wasn't alone, though. It was going off a little bit farther in the front. I think that may have been Antonio Reese spinning off the circuit. There he is in the 914 car. So Reese and Wilkie both having very similar moments of their own fruition. Looking at Reese and the moment that he had heading through this section, it's basically a hole in the earth that they paved a racetrack around, so it is a bowl where you can see a lot of standing water, and there's Wilkie spinning off the track. Contact being made with himself and Tufts sending him off the circuit. Joyner, though, having to take some very good evasive action to avoid contact. Look at that from Joyner. That is terrifying.
Yep, great job by Joyner, able to get away from all of that. Wilkie back on the track, though. It does look like there may have been a little bit of contact between himself and Daniel Tufts. I don't know. I mean, it looked maybe just like he was probably already in the process of spinning like Antonio Reese was, but right now he is sitting side by side with, looks like Jesus Rodriguez right in front of him. Who is that right beside him, Ron? Daniel Verone, I believe.
Looking through right now, I believe that may be Verone running right behind him. There's Verone in the 272 car running in 20th as it stands at the moment. He's lost out on 4 spots thus far, which is a little bit surprising. As a PA native myself, I can assure you that the conditions that you're seeing out there on the racetrack are just about the conditions that you usually see on your average PA road throughout 98% of the calendar year. Jesus Rodriguez, though, I think may have just had a moment. Actually, my apologies. That may have been Ron Johnson in the 466 car. I think he was mega sideways coming out of the final corner of Murray's, and he's now dropping down to 21st. Got Guido Marzuki alongside him heading down into turn at number 1 right now. Marzuki in that 819 car. Get the move done, but get another move done and going for a spin through turn number 1. I was just going to note that he may have got a move put on Daniel Verone as Verone went off the track, but Marzuki, maybe a little bit of target fixation going on there, Adam. Spins in protest.
He does, and let's see if we can go back here to see exactly what happened to Marzuki. So we can go here to the pass that Marzuki had on Johnson here. My goodness, there is a freaking, it's a mess back there.
It absolutely is. Looks like the parking lot of a Kmart on Black Friday back in 1999. Running on board with Marzuki in the midst of all of this spray, hang down into turn number 1. You can see Verone in the 272 car right in front, overcooking it into the corner. Marzuki following him, hits the paint, and just snaps around on him.
That is unfortunate for Guido, but obviously no damage, able to keep it going, sitting back there in 28th position. And I hate to do this, Ron, we've got another one.
I believe that may have been Hagen, following Wilkie, who I think may have also had an off-track excursion of his own. Seeing him heading down the Bentley straightaway. He's got Chris Montgomery going side by side right in front. But let's see what happened to Wilkie in the 23. Oh, a big stack up there. Oh, up into the air. I believe that may have been Russ Telker, who got popped up into the air. Looked like a skateboard move. Actually, no, my apologies. It was Brad Cathcart pulling off a move that you'd probably see on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. But Cathcart in the 905 car getting involved in this schmozzle. You can see And that was Jesus Rodriguez getting by him, and then Chris Montgomery making contact as he went side by side with Cathcart. Cathcart getting popped up into the air, and I believe Rob Johnson may have gotten a piece of that action as well.
Yep, looks like there was quite a bit going on there. Shamazel, I see how you did that. You're starting to use Mr. Wilkie's terms now. I like it. Shamazel. That's a heck of a term, by the way, Joshua. What is a shamazel, Ron?
Oh boy, really testing my English skills. I was an absolutely terrible kid in English class, which makes sense considering the kind of commentator that I am. I'm gonna have to hit the books and figure out what shamazel is. I'm not even sure how you spell shamazel. Oh, it's apparently spelled S-H-E-M-O-Z-Z-L-E. A state of chaos and confusion. And then a semicolon, a muddle.
Speaking of chaos and confusion, Antonio Reese is out of the race.
Yeah, I could just see him right as I go back to my production feed, the absolute expert that I am, only having one screen to take a look at for these broadcasts. But Antonio Reese going off the circuit yet again in the 914 car. Let's see the replay of it, and that looks like he just decided to call it a day.
Yeah, and here is the why I think he decided to call it a day. Sitting behind the 21 car right now. Does he catch the... Oh, he did just catch the paint on the straightaway even, Ron. The paint got him sideways.
Just touched the paint slightly, and he goes for a one-way trip into that Armco barrier around that Bentley straightaway. Reese getting bit by the bullet there. That's going to take him out of this race. Joining the likes of Nick Tulo, Artur Lorero, Russ Telker, and Edward Buchanan, who did not take the start. But in all that drama, Ian Joyner has taken the lead of the race from Kevin Adrian.
He has. He's doing a great job as well. I mean, Ian Joyner, one of those drivers that we know is always going to be fast around here, especially with James Berry not around right now, but Ian Joyner is definitely the class of the field. Kevin Adrian, extremely fast, though, in the wet, doing a great job. Real quickly here before I continue my statement, hello in the chat to Alex, Noobsaurus, Edgar, Tam, Trenton, everybody sitting there in the chat watching. Yes, Alex did say, by the way, Ron, the water looks wet. Yes, Alex, the water is wet, and the paint is... Tam said the paint looks like Teflon. It is acting quite a bit like Teflon as well.
Can't stick to it at all. Perfect surface to make a grilled cheese on. Not a very good surface to drive a race car on, though. Following Jörg Mani, he stayed off the Teflon for now, finding himself in fourth in a small little battle with himself, Thortillo, and Daniel Tufts. These drivers covered by practically nothing, heading down the Bentley straightaway at the moment. Daniel Tufts may try and size up a move on Mani as Mani's trying to size up a move on Tulo. They may be three wide heading down into turn number 4 of Brundle, and big contact being made. Tufts and Tulo both going off the track. Looked like they got linked together. The front nose cone of Tufts hitting the gearbox of Thortillo, and they both go off the circuit, losing out on the position to Jörg Mani. And I think with that wild off-track trip that they took, they may have to serve a slowdown penalty as well, which could bring Michael McConnell into that fight. But Jörg Mani is going to be the beneficiary of that drama heading down into Brundle.
Let's see if we can get an onboard view here from Daniel Tufts. This is the second time, I believe, that Tufts has gotten into the back of somebody going into a braking zone. See if we can figure this out real quick here, Ron. And going on board here with Tulo first.
Oh, you can hear that small little bit of contact being made. A small difference in when you're braking can lead to a big amount of drama, and Tulo having to take so much of a cautious trip through that grass and want to spin again. Yeah, Tufts, I can't even say that was a difference in braking. I think Tufts may have locked the rears, had absolutely nowhere to go but run into the back of Tulo. In these old school race cars, you can expect some old school moments like that. A bit of rear locking in the braking zone heading into one of the fastest corners around this track. It's going to cost the both of them badly, but they're still not entirely out of it as Tulo's close up that gap to Jörg Mani to be below a second. We saw a fantastic recovery drive from Tulo yesterday in the Formula Vs, where after a spin, battling with Jason Green for the lead of that race, he ended up grabbing the victory when everything was said and done. As we mentioned, Green, he's now involved in the side-by-side fight with Garrett, but if any driver is going to come back from the brink of disaster, it's going to be Tulo.
100% Tulo is definitely one of those drivers that can do that. He is fast enough to do it, and Speaking of battles with Jason Green, Garrett's has found himself in one today with Jason Green. Jason, just through attrition, has gained a couple positions from the start, I believe. About 4, actually, so a little bit more than a couple. But right now, he's trying to hold off Garrett's, and Garrett's seems like he's pretty fast, Ron.
Yeah, Garrett's the Belgian in the number 21 car, certainly feeling racy at this point in time. Side by side, hang down that start finish straight away into turn 1. I think Jason Green, understandably so, backing out of it. This corner is tricky enough to go side by side through in the dry, let alone in the pouring rain. So Jason Green at this point in time playing the safe game for now and deciding to yield that position to Soren Garrett. Certainly feeling very fast, though. Last time by, Garrett saying a 125 compared to Jason Green at 126.3. So Garrett's certainly feeling confident in his chances as we see some side-by-side racing involving Monty and Tulo heading down into turn number 4. Let's see Tulo getting that move done. Well done, Tulo. That's usually you'd think, okay, in dry conditions, that's a textbook move. In the rain, though, any sort of move can be incredibly sketchy with some pretty big consequences. So Tulo flexing his muscles and getting past to move his way up into an overall podium.
We are only 11 minutes into this race as well. We still have a little bit under 30 minutes to go, Ron. So Tulo, as Tufts is off the track behind them, gets it back on the track. Tulo does have a chance to track these guys down. Now we have to start looking at lap times here. Try to figure out exactly where these drivers are. So Adrian with a 24.833, Tulo through traffic, 25.152. So Tulo is still battling, though, I think, with Jorg Money. Nope. So Tulo's going to have some clean air here. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, let's see. Will he be able to make hay while the sun is certainly not shining? But as he's driving past the hayfields around this racetrack, Tulo running in third at the moment, but the Hornet's Nest behind is still going to be intense. Kevin Adrian, though, finding himself doing a small little bit of Sunday cruising at this point, finding himself in P2 with Ian Joyner 5.5 seconds farther up the road, and Tulo about 5 seconds back. This, though, the side-by-side racing involving Tufts and Monty. This is going to be very, very close. Tulo hoping that he doesn't have a round of bowling strike him. Thankfully, though, the cars of Monty and Tufts not going to act as a bowling ball to take Tulo out heading through 4 and 5. But right now, Monty and Tufts, that was very, very sketchy. Doubly so considering what happened involving Tufts and Tulo not very long ago. Looking at Tufts getting some moves done.
Oh, no, Tulo's off track.
Away. Tulo, though, going off the track through turn number 7, my apologies. That's going to drop him down behind Monty and Tufts. Loses out on a little bit of time, a couple of spots. Very lucky, though, that he didn't just spear off the racetrack because the grass, that with rain in the factor, the grass, that's going to be Tam mentioned the Teflon not terribly long ago. That's got to be Teflon cranked up to about 11 in terms of the unstickiness as Monty mega squirrely heading through the braking zone into turn 1.
So here's what I want to do here. I know this cockpit view looks a little bit weird. I don't know what iRacing has decided to do with the cockpit, but I want to stay on board here with Thor Tulo for 1 second and watch what happens when they get in line. And look at how blind you are. And I think this is why Tufts did run into the back of Tulo. You cannot see anything in front of you, Ron.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, that's probably, what do you say, probably about 20 feet between the cockpit of Tulo's car and the back of Tufts, and you could just see the rain light, and that is about all. So even through, as we slow down, it's still pretty blind, but Monty just speared off the track heading down into turn number 5. That's going to take him out of that battle. I knew when he ran wide through turn 4 that was going to set himself up for absolute disaster through 5, and just saw that got put on full display a couple of moments ago. And here is the moment with Jorg Monty in the 925 car heading his way off through turn number 4. Spears off the track, hits the paint, and absolutely nothing to do besides go off the track, mow some grass, and try and get the car back under you.
No.
That's a mistake, an easy one to make in real life and in the rain as well. But what's going on here, Adam? I hear he's saying, oh, no. Oh, Soren Garrett's maybe having a moment.
Yeah, a driver that was battling Jason Green for the longest time has gone, it's shown a crash here. What has happened to Soren? Uh-oh. Lock up.
Oh, and he keeps it on the road through turn number 2, surprisingly so. But that was definitely very close. Possibly an overslow for Soren Garrett's heading through that corner. Either way, that's going to lose him out on a little bit of time. Here's a moment involving Daniel Tufts. He's been the center of attention throughout a decent chunk of this broadcast because a lot of the drama has been going on around him. And speaking of going around, was this possibly a spin? Yes, it was a spin. And Tulo! Holy cow, Tulo's going to need a change of underwear after that. Holy crap.
Yeah, we'll go back and watch that again from Tulo's point of view, because that had to be one of the scariest moments. Thor's had a couple now at this point, Ron, trying to dodge a couple of these drivers.
Yeah, Tulo has not had an easy race at all. There's Thompson. Whoa, boy. Well done on the evasive maneuvers from Tulo. You could tell it was close based off the fact I sound like a Pokemon character a couple of moments ago, but that was very good stuff from Tulo. Heads up driving, finds himself in third at the moment. However, even with Daniel Tufts spinning out of that battle, still going to find himself involved in a Hornet's Nest because you've got McConnell getting a move put on him as Tulo now comes down pit lane. Right as I was mentioning, he's involved in a Hornet's Nest. He's now bringing that Hornet's Nest down pit lane, getting out of that Hornet's Nest and using pit lane as a little bit of a shelter for now, as McConnell and Monty now inherit P3 and P4 and may start to fight. Monty leading it at the moment in the Masters category. Joyner leading it currently in Spec 1, leading this race overall. And go a little bit further back to find the German of Boris Esmond, who's leading still in the Spec 2 category. Haven't really talked about Boris yet, but he's just been putting on a very methodical drive in that 213 car. Finds himself maybe battling with Wilkie in the not too far off future, but Esmond putting on a really good drive, but it may be a position lost as Wilkie getting that move done on him to slip his way up into 9th and drop Esmond back down to 10th. And right as I mentioned that, the commentator jinxed sideways, slideways.
Did he
well
save
held
it?
from Esmond.
I don't know. We're going to have to go back and see if he had that saved or if he did tag the wall, because Esmond needed to save that. I think that was, I was about to say, that was a smart move by Esmond by allowing Wilkie around, knowing that Wilkie was not his battle. But I think Esmond, after letting Wilkie around, was just not on the line he wanted to be on. Let's take a look, Ron.
Yeah, let's see Esmond's perspective in this mega snap. Gets in the spray of Wilkie, and there you go. I mentioned it earlier on in this broadcast, Adam, and look at that. He keeps it at the barrier, so well held from Boris Esmond to keep that car going without any sort of damage. But I mentioned earlier on the spray. You pull back into the spray, and it feels like your tires are, I don't even know the best way to describe it. Tires feel like they're made out of wood whenever you pull back into the spray. And I think Esmond just proved my point there heading through 1.
Well, so when it comes to the spray, it's a weird thing, right? I think it's more of a mental thing than it is a grip thing. Now, with that being said, I don't know how well iRacing model, because now we're starting to get into the weeds of this stuff, how well iRacing models water that has just come off the back of another car. So if you think about that, Ron, you're used to running in a wet line and all of a sudden you're right behind a driver who has just driven right through those same lines that you drive through. That track, those tire tracks will be dry. And you wonder if that has something to do with it, or if it is just more of a mental thing. When you get into the spray of somebody, your mind plays tricks on you because you can't really see where you're going. And I think that your reaction is to hit the brakes, and that's what causes the spin.
Yeah, the mind games are oh so important in the racing world. I remember from my time just doing autocross, trying to psych out my competitors and being like, hey, you may want to take it easy through this corner. Meanwhile, I just go flat out through there like it's nothing. And speaking of going flat out, these racers going flat out down the straightaway, and Boris Esmond getting his doors flat out blown off by Daniel Tufts heading down the Bentley straightaway. But you bring up a very good point there, Adam, in reference to talking about the mind games that certainly affect a driver. If you're not confident in the way you're driving and not confident in your race car or the conditions you find yourself in, that's got to be a really tough hill to try and climb, because confidence in a car like this where you're sideways through all of the bends is really important. Following Tyler Hagan, though, in the 499 car, I think he may have just had a moment heading through turn number 1, hits the puddle and goes off the track, but I think he got away with one there. But into turn number 2, and okay, very, very much nearly stopped in trying to get it saved, but well done from Hagan to keep that car going somewhat close enough to a straight line. It was definitely, it looked like my handwriting back in the day, even to this day for that matter, but still well held from Hagan.
While we're looking at this, do you see his It's this SRG Endurance team down there, Ron. I believe that Tyler may be a transplant from the SRG League that we now commentate on Wednesday, or we now produce on Wednesday nights. We have Alex in the chat as well from SRG, so welcome in, Tyler, to the Weekend Warriors.
And welcome in everyone from the SRG world tuning into Slow Motion Broadcasting. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. Speaking of the action from the SRG series, that'll be coming up this upcoming Wednesday in just a couple of days' time at about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here's a moment for Andrew Love. Got to lose out on a spot from Soren Garrett's hang through turn number 2. Just about the same thing that we saw from Hagen, but no, he may have come back. Oh, no.
Hold on.
Ian Joyner from the lead of this race as he gone off the track. He has gone off the track. He goes for a spin, loops it catastrophically. Their turn number 1 pulls off a nice 360 though. They're going to lose out on a boatload of time. And let's see. Has he lost out on the lead of this race? I'm looking through.
No.
I think he's still holding on to the lead. Kevin Adrian may have had a moment himself because that gap is still at about 7 seconds between Joyner and Adrian. Joyner, though, with that spin, he still didn't lose out on a whole lot of time. That is stunning.
That is Max Verstappen-esque right there, to be able to loop your car full 360, laugh it off, and stay in the lead of the race. Unbelievable job by Joyner. Keeps it going in the right direction. Looking back here, Jorg Mani is about 7 seconds off of Adrian, but McConnell is not 7 seconds off of Mani.
Yeah, McConnell is still right there within striking distance if Mani has any sort of mistake. But at this point in time, now that we're over the halfway mark, these racers certainly thinking about their run down pit lane, having to deal with the traffic in the form of Guido Marzuki in the 819. They're not coming down pit lane yet again, but one driver who did was Thortullo. He finds himself in 8th at the present moment. I'm curious what kind of lap times he's setting. Last time by, I think it was, he set a 1:25.3. Now we're really involved in a giant pack of race cars, just getting the opportunity, put some lap times on the board, not worry about the spray, and just take it easy. This is really good for Thortullo. I'm curious, if he plays his cards right, he may be able to break out of that fight with himself, Jorg Mani, and Michael McConnell, and if he plays his cards really, really right, and maybe has a little bit of bad luck befall Kevin Adrian, he may find himself battling for P2.
Yeah, I have a sneaky suspicion Thortullo in clean air finally doesn't have anybody around him, doesn't have Jorg Mani and Michael McConnell and Daniel Tufts back there fighting with him. Might be able to get something done here. Maybe not all the way up to Ian Joyner, because again, if you think of that gap as 8 seconds to Adrian, or to Joyner from Adrian, you have to think of that gap as a lot further away for Thortullo even after he pits. So even after Joyner pits. So it's going to be close. But Adrian, I think, does really have a chance, or Thor does have a chance to get to Adrian at least. We'll have to see, because looking at Thor's last lap time, again, 24.6 compared to 24.7 for Adrian.
Yeah, it may not seem like too much, and in the grand scheme of things, it isn't. It's a 0.06 of a second, I believe, between those two last time by. But those small little pace discrepancies can slowly but surely whittle away at a gap. I mean, this is a very bad analogy for me to make, but as someone who's had to learn this, who had a nail-biting habit for the first 19 years of his life, finally learning what to do to manage my nails. If your nails get too long, you don't cut at them with a chainsaw. You just whittle away at them a little bit with a nail file, and that'll get the job done a lot better than a chainsaw ever could. So Tullo at this point, he's not making any big swings. He's not swinging for the fences, and he's not cutting that gap down by seconds lap after lap. He's just slowly but surely taking a methodical approach to this. Last time by 0.3 quicker than Kevin Adrian. This could be really, really productive for Tullo to get involved in that second place battle. I believe it was about 5 seconds between those two at the time that Tullo came down pit lane. But if he does those 0.3 improvements, 0.2 improvement, 0.1 improvement, it will slowly but surely bring him into that fight. And speaking of a fight, Wilkie and Tufts now battling for 9th.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we need to talk about, too, real quick before we get into this battle with Wilkie and Tufts, is Adrian in his pit lane entry. This is going to be a big deal for Adrian. He's going to have to get it spot on, Ron, but Daniel Tufts in the grass. Oh, my goodness. That was dangerous, Ron.
Holy cow. Daniel Tufts, does he have no fear? Does he have no ability to see where he is out there on the racetrack? Who knows? Either way, he got that moved on a Wilkie to slip his way up onto the line. So I think regardless of how he was able to get it done, I don't think he's going to be complaining one bit, but sideways, slideways. Beautiful save from Daniel Tufts heading through bomb hole of turn number 6. How he kept that car going in a straight line is an absolute miracle, Adam. I'm curious who can load up a replay on board with Tufts, because he had to saw at that wheel like it was trying to cut down a tree. Still sideways heading through turn number 8, but that was a whole lot of drama involving Tufts trying to get moved on a Wilkie. Here we go, heading through it up. Whoa, dear sweet baby merciful Jesus. You can tell that was tense based off the fact my voice shot up about 15 octaves, but Tufts getting that moved on Wilkie heading into turn number 4 and 5. You can hear the scrubbing of the tires as he heads through 4, now into turn 5, savoring the moment before what was normal. Then hell broke loose going down the Bentley straightaway. Then things were going all right, and then hang through bomb hole. Let's take a look at this, and sideways. Yee howdy. Gets it saved though in only one foul swoop. Just bit of opposite lock heading through.
A bit.
And he gets it back rolling.
A bit of opposite.
Yeah, a sprinkling of opposite lock.
Great job by Daniel being able to hold on to that thing. But it looks like Wilkie has come into the pits, I believe, while we were watching that. Or has Wilkie had an off track somewhere? Yes, Wilkie has been in and out of the pits. That's why he's so far back, making sure we didn't miss something there. But who have we not talked about yet? Alan DeGasis. Let's talk about him for a second, Ron. Up 7 spots. Obviously, he hasn't pitted yet, but drivers we haven't talked about, which is a good thing. Quiet, moving forward.
Yeah, just taking that methodical approach to this race, not being the center of attention throughout this race, because that's usually the best way to go about it. You don't want to be out in front of a camera or something like that being, hey, look at me, because that'll probably lead to some sort of accident possibly befalling you. But DeGasis has just put on a really methodical drive, finds himself in 6th, second of the Masters racers, and you have to go back to Chris Murakami, who's I think about 25 seconds farther behind, now battling with Jim Brewster as we see those two heading through turn number 1. But this is still, it's a pretty good race for DeGasis. Let's see how things will shake out between now and the checkered flag.
Oof.
Coming up in less than 14 minutes time, you can see the drivers struggling for grip heading through 2 and 3.
Yeah, that when you could just see Jim was very, very uneasy off throttle. That's when these things really do start to like to slide out on you. It's really weird when you get on the throttle that they want to try to grip up, but you could see Jim just tiptoeing his way through the hairpin there, trying to figure out where the grip is, and Murakami's around in front of him.
Yeah, there we go. Murakami going for a spin through 4 and 5. Not the first time we've seen a driver get bit by the bullet heading through that section. Not going to be the last either. Murakami in the 901. Now finding himself in a battle with himself and Trent Kramer, who I think is the only driver in the entirety of this grid who's still running in the same spot where he started in this race. Hasn't lost out on some time, hasn't gained any time either, but he may be able to pick off one spot as Murakami still trying to get his bearings straight, hang through turn number 7.
Yeah, that was quite interesting watching that from Jim Brewster's point of view. Jim has moved himself up a position, sitting 3rd in class right now. Jorg Monty still sitting 1st in class, though. 3rd overall, and I really don't see any way as Montgomery has jumped to the pits. Montgomery out of the race. He has fallen back from, I think, 6th position is where Montgomery was running. But anyways, yeah, looking here, we've got what was I going to say? Monty, I don't think he's got a chance to get to Adrian. I think 3rd place is about where he's going to be. But speaking of drivers who have a chance to get to Adrian, Tulo is off track.
Oh boy, the commentators jinx seemingly to preemptively strike Thor Tulo. Be careful here on the rejoin though. Thor gang by him is Daniel Tufts. These two were battling earlier on. They're now battling coming to the end of this race. And here's a moment from Tulo in that number 27 car. You can see him squirrely in the braking zone, sends him wide through 4, hits the paint, and just has a one-way ticket to the outside grass runoff area into turn number 5. That's an easy mistake to make in the dry, an easier mistake to make break in the rain, but Tulo going to cost him out on a whole lot of time. I was going to mention how Monty was probably going to be battling for fourth when Tulo shook his way up into the Kevin Adrian fight, but you can throw that out the window because I think Tulo may have cost himself a lot of time a couple of moments ago. I will bring up a storyline that I don't think we've mentioned thus far, Adam. The pit stops, of course, continuing to go on. Some drivers slowly but surely trickling their way down pit lane, including Paul Jackson, who's now leading in the Spec 2 category. The old leader, Spec 2, Boris Essman, he came down pit lane, spent 17 seconds down the pit zone. I think he's returned yet again. So Boris Essman's race kind of falling apart.
Yeah, well, Paul Jackson has had an issue too. So let's see what happened to Boris Essman first. We can kind of talk about Paul Jackson after that, or they might be involved in the same incident here, which might be why they're both coming into the pits at this time. So Boris Essman going around. Is that Paul Jackson behind him? Yes, it is.
Oh! Thankfully, no one had any aerial acrobatics, but that's still going to be a significant amount of damage on both of those race cars. Riding on board with Paul Jackson and his perspective in this drama, the 249 car, you can see just barely picking out Essman's car in the spray. Hits a puddle on the inside line. Jackson trying to avoid an Essman kind of rolling into the path of Jackson. You can see that front left tire getting broken off of Paul Jackson's race car. That's going to take him out of this race entirely. Jackson was leading in Spec 2. Is now in all that drama. It's given the lead to this man, Daniel Verone, in the 272 car. I don't believe he has ever won in his class in the Weekend Warrior Series. So Verone, the Pennsylvanian, in that 272 car, running in 12th overall at the moment, looking to do something he has never done before, and that is grab a class victory. It looks like he's pretty much so on track to do it. I will say, though, Jackson, despite my assumption a couple of moments ago, he's rejoined this race as Verone runs wide.
He has, and again, Jackson probably using that quick repair, and this is what I wanted to talk about right now, is Verone coming into the pits. There is Verone coming into the pits. Look behind you. Look for a red and white paint job of Paul Jackson coming out of the final corner. There it is right there, Ron.
Yeah, there we go. Verone stopped in his pit stall. There's Paul Jackson. I'm surprised by this, Adam. I was fully expecting with the front left tire completely broken off of that race car that he was going to be out of it, but using up some fast repairs and getting that car back into tip-top shape to find himself in 13th overall and in the lead of the Spec 2 category. Pretty under the radar race from Jackson. I should probably keep my mouth shut about it, though, as he nearly goes off the track hanging through turn 1.
Yeah, that was another very, very close call for Jackson. It's tough for these drivers, I think, to keep it off the white line coming out of turn 1. And that's what's causing quite a few problems here. But Trenton Kramer is in a battle right now with Alan DeGasis. Trenton is finding himself, starting to find his footing a bit, up 2 positions from the start of the race as well. So Trenton starting to do some things here. Alan DeGasis up 5 spots. We talked about Alan just kind of moving along, sitting right now in 2nd position in class. But Trenton's found some speed all of a sudden.
Yeah, Trent Kramer kicking on the Hyperjets, running in 9th at the moment, and he may be able to get another spot done on DeGasis. Last time by, those two not very evenly matched pace-wise. DeGasis had, well, is at a 131.7 compared to Kramer at a 125.4. So let's see how things shake out between these two. Will DeGasis be able to hold off that challenge from Kramer, or is Kramer in the number 20 car going to be able to get that move done? Ian Joyner and Kevin Adrian, they've now come down into the pits. So P1 and P2, as they've been throughout a vast majority of this race, finally coming in with a tick under 7 minutes left on the clock. Ian Joyner already exiting out, finding himself in 3rd, only about 8 seconds, 7.5 to be a bit more precise, back of this man, Jorg Monty, who has inherited the lead as a result of all that. Kevin Adrian going to be exiting the pits too. He still finds himself in 4th, so Joyner and Adrian not swapping positions, having pretty uniform runs down into the pits. So that's going to be, it looks like Joyner doing everything he needed to do. We saw last time out at Brands Hatch, the pit stops came, and with it, his race just about fell apart. So Joyner hoping that lightning doesn't strike twice, as he may try and get a move done on Paul Jackson, who's a lapped car, heading down the Bentley straightaway.
Yeah, I think Joyner now has this one in the bag. He just got to keep it nice and calm for the next 6 minutes of this race. Joyner's done everything he's got to do today to make sure to bring home this win, and I don't think anybody has held a candle to Joyner after the first couple laps of the race, Ron. But Jorg Monty and Michael McConnell still have to pit, and this is going to be a battle in the pits as much as it is on track, and McConnell got a little bit loose there.
Yeah, I think he had a small little wiggle heading through turn number 7 as he and Monty going to follow each other down pit lane. So that'll be their one and only pit stop required in this race. And it feels like this race has absolutely flown by, Adam. Less than 6 minutes to go here for round number 3 of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. And if all of you tuning into this broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting have enjoyed it so far, how about you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the action here on SMB? And how about you hit the like as well. Always appreciate some likes on the stream as well. But what is going on here? Monty going to be coming out well in front of McConnell. So those two spreading out by about a second and a half. I think McConnell had a pretty slow run down the pits.
Yeah, he did. That was unfortunate for Michael McConnell. Looking back here, though, it looks like Trenton Kramer still trying to find a way past Alan DeGasis. One thing I can say about Alan, I have raced him before. Very, very staunch defense. Does a great job defending, and it is very, very tough to get around him. Even you have to be almost a full second faster to have a clear run at Alan, or Alan will battle you, and that's what's happening right now between himself and Trenton Kramer.
Alan DeGasis seeming to have the technological wizardry to widen any sort of race car he's in by about 5 times. So this is looking like a pretty good defensive drive from DeGasis. Kramer still behind, and last time by, those two were rather evenly matched pace-wise. And you can see Kramer nearly having a big off-track moment coming out of turn number 3. Saw some grass getting kicked up into the air, hit the curb, jumped the curb, and went into the dirt. So I think that could have ended in tears for Trenton Kramer. Maybe feeling a little bit impatient at this point. He's behind Alan DeGasis for a while, but trying to get a move done into turn number 4. Not close enough, though. But you can see Trenton Kramer trying to wheel it around that 904 car, the 20. I don't know about you, Adam, but I feel like just from our perspective in the commentary booth, as DeGasis sideways, slideways through turn number 6, that's going to be the opportunity that Trenton Kramer tries to seize side by side through turn number 7 and nearly banging wheels heading through this bend. It tightens up, though, before they head off into turn number 8. Let's see this. This is going to be very close.
Oy, what is happening? What are they doing? My God, how did they not crash, Ron?
I don't know. You could tell that racing action was incredibly close based off the fact you sound like you sat on a cold toilet seat there, Adam, but that was insane. And Kramer was mega sideways coming out of turn number 8.
Oh, that one got me. That one got me.
Oh, boy. Kramer, though, still fine. I have thrown this broadcast off the rails with like 3 minutes left on the clock.
Oh,
look at that. DeGasis running wide through turn number 2. That's going to be the shot that Kramer needs. Very close to making contact through turn number 3.
Wow.
But Trenton Kramer going to get that move done finally. After what felt like a 1,000-year wait, he finally makes his way up to 8th.
Applause. My absolute applause goes to those two drivers right there. That is a battle that needs to be clipped, Ron, so we can put that one in a video somewhere, because that went on for about 2 laps. Unbelievable driving by those two incredibly talented iRacers.
And that was some pretty good racing, equipped with one of the hardest laps I've ever had in my entire broadcasting career. So that was a whole lot of stuff going on in the span of about a lap and a half between those two guys. Say that could have ended in near disaster on several occasions. So well done to both of those racers.
Look out, Andrew
for
Love.
being able to do that battle as cleanly as they did. As Andrew Love and Antonio Reese going side by side with some alien abductions going on right in front, involving the 466 car of Johnson farther up the road. But these two were going side by side. There's Rob Johnson as he's on the racetrack for now.
Yes.
Seems like the UFO's seeming to stalk Snetterton.
Yeah. UFO definitely trying to find the Bulgarian there. Looks like he's been able to outrun them for now. Let's say he's outrunning the UFO for now. But the problem with outrunning the iRacing UFOs is for some reason, they somehow find a way to become dependent on your internet connection, and you cannot outrun your internet connection.
Oh, absolutely not. We've seen that problem. I've seen that problem myself, not only in my time broadcasting, but in my time running around iRacers, and that's usually very terrifying.
It is.
Going side by side into a very fast corner with a driver whose internet modem is probably a cereal box is terrifying. So some of these racers really trying to manage the race as best as they can. One driver who's managed this race in many different ways is Soren Garrett. He's been quick, but he started this race in 9th. He's running in 10th at the moment, but I can't necessarily say that's entirely down to Garrett's possibly running into some difficulties, because the drivers in front of him have made up a boatload of time. But has there been something going on involving Guido Marzucchi in the 819 car?
I'm so
Let's
sorry,
see this
Guido.
hang through turn 7. Yeah.
Yep, just gets it wrong. Paul Jackson around the inside there. Paul able to gain a position there. But hey, Ron.
Yeah.
That's not Paul Jackson.
Yeah, that's Andrew Love there leading this race in the Spec 2 category. So Paul Jackson, after getting struck by a bunch of falling raindrops and falling icicles, the rain has now returned after a brief absence from this race. But either way, Andrew Love on track for a Spec 2 victory. That's coming out of the blue from Love, up 11 spots from where he started in this race, making him the hard charger. So well done to him. Meanwhile, at the north end of the field, Ian Joyner crosses the start-finish line well in front of Kevin Adrian to take another victory this season. So Joyner looking to make a habit out of winning those odd-numbered races. He wins it yet again. Kevin Adrian going to finish 19.18 seconds back in P2, and he plays me like a fiddle to make a 19.2 at the line. York Monty going to win it in the Masters category in the 925. You have to wait a little bit, though, to find Andrew Love, who just crossed the line to win it in Spec 2. That was a photo finish, though, involving Tufts. I think he and Jeff Jacobson were side by side there, so I think that was no harm, no foul in that battle. We got some battles going on, and Paul Jackson running out of fuel coming to the line. The no good, awful race for Paul Jackson going to end with him running out of gas as Trent Kramer crossing line in 8th.
Alan DeGase is coming home in 9th. Soren Garrett's there. We'll see him coming across the line in 10th. And Paul Jackson does find his way across the line in 20th position. Rob Johnson there in 10th with Andrew Love in 11th, first place in class. So Paul Jackson clearly running into some fuel trouble, trying to save as much as he could, which could explain why his pit stop was so short there after he came in to get that damage repaired, Ron. But yes, Andrew Love. Unfortunate for Daniel Verone, thought he was going to get his first win of the Spec 2, but Andrew Love takes it.
Yeah, Andrew Love, no stranger to winning in the Spec 2 category. He's been dominant thus far in the Formula V Weekend Warriors, which you can catch every single Saturday here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Oh, okay.
Here we go.
I was just about to break out a bad thing, but we got another funny thing happening here. Lots of funny moments throughout this broadcast, and the Weekend Warriors always have a tradition of having many bizarre things happen after the drop of the checkered flag. I'm surprised you're not going for the jump of the curb, and no, oh my good dear God, that was a big collision between a lot of those racers. Look at Andrew Love, though, coming in at Mach 5.
No.
I think we saw Josh Wilkie involved in that as well. Oh, look at the slide there for Brad Cathcart. You know what this is like, Adam? Oh, and there's Ian Joyner coming in for the kill on Jason Green. You know what this reminds me of, Adam? It reminds me of a round of curling.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's good. I like that. That's true.
Here's a nice little fun fact for you and anyone tuning into any of the broadcasts that I do. I kind of joke about the fact I know absolutely nothing about any other sport outside of racing. The only other sport that I really enjoy watching is curling. So you could tell that I was bullied a lot when I was in school.
Wait, stop, time out. Like you're not kidding. You don't watch curling just in the Olympics, and like you actually watch curling outside of the Olympics.
Correct. Yes. Whenever it's on TV and I have the opportunity to watch it, I will try and figure out any sort of way to tune into that broadcast. There's a story behind that I may be able to share between now and the end of this broadcast. Maybe for the Spec Racer Ford broadcast that we're going to be on later on. So
I like that.
Should I share that story now, or should I go into these results here?
Why don't we go into the results, and we'll go live just a little bit early for you to share your curling story for the Spec Racer Fords.
Oh, trust me, it is not a very good story.
That makes it even better already.
Oh boy, okay, so stay tuned. It gives you more reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell here to Slow Motion Broadcasting to watch me talk about curling on an iRacing broadcast. But Ian Joyner, though, going to take the checkered flag in dominating fashion here. under the raindrops and under the rain clouds here at Snetterton. Wins it. Kevin Adrian going to finish 19.2 seconds back in P2. Jurg Mani going to round out your overall podium in third, winning it in the Masters category. Then we have Michael McConnell in fourth. Daniel Thompson fifth. Thor Tulo going to finish right behind in P6. Jason Green in seventh. Trent Kramer in P8. Alan DeGasse is going to take the checkered flag in ninth overall, second of the Masters racers. Then we have Soren Garrett's rounding at your top 10. Jesus Rodriguez finishes in 11th. Jim Brewster finishes behind in 12th. Rob Johnson, who we talked about occasionally throughout those broadcasts, the UFOs, or the UFOs as my dad would call them, seemingly not catching up to Rob Johnson as he finishes in lucky number P13. Antonio Reese, who had a really up and down race, finishes in 14th overall. Andrew Love takes the win in the Spec 2 category and also becomes a hard charger from this race, finishing 11 spots up from where he started. So well done to Love in that 544 car. He finishes right in front of SMB's very own Josh Wilkie. Jeff Jacobson in 17th. Guido Marzuki finishing in P18. And rounding out your top 20 is going to be John Toms and Paul Jackson.
Daniel Verone in 21st. Brad Cathcart 22nd, with Chris Mirakami coming home in 23rd. Chris Montgomery, that was a bit confusing, in 24th, with Boris Essman rounding out your top 25. Kyler Hagan, Jeff Lubker, Adam Bradshaw, Edward Buchanan, and Arthur Lorero rounding out your top 30, with Nick Tulo and Russell Telker rounding out your 32-car grid this afternoon. And very quickly here, looking here in the interview waiting room, Ron, like we've got a few drivers up in there. Who do you want?
I think I will drag in our Spec 1 winner, that being Ian Joyner, who's now joining us in the commentary booth. And Joyner, sorry for I apologize for dragging you into the commentary booth mid-sentence there. Sorry about that, man. But congratulations on grabbing yet another victory from this season. Looking to try and challenge for the championship title, and doing everything you need to do here at Snetterton. So talk us through this rain-soaked race that we just saw here today.
Yeah, relatively straightforward after the first lap, other than just keeping on the track, which I did have. I don't know if you spotted it. I did have a little spin, but survived.
We saw.
Yeah, it's
Prying eyes will always be looking.
I maybe would have pushed a bit less hard with it if I'd had a bit more of a less of a gap. But besides that, yeah, it was okay. I think I was fortunate. I don't know where Antonio ended up in the end, but I know he had a spin. I was happy not to collect him. That was nearly an early finish. After that, yeah, Kevin's pace was pretty strong early on, but I think he said, just chatting to him then, he said he wasn't confident enough to go at that sort of qualifying pace the whole time. So I think that gave me, as soon as I got a little gap, then it just gets that bit easier, and you're just trying to get on with it then. But it was cold and miserable in Snetterton today.
Yeah, it looked cold and rainy all throughout it, but you still grabbed your second checkered flag of the season, doing so at possibly rather different track than how you grabbed your first victory of the season, that being at Silverstone a couple of weeks ago. I want to ask you about the differences between Silverstone and Snetterton. Both have an S in their name, but outside of that, I think that's just about where the comparisons end between those two tracks.
Yeah, I think obviously Silverstone's F1 spec and just generally much more open, faster corners. Snetterton probably suits these cars more, really. Tricky corners though, whether it's dry or wet. And especially down that back straight, the braking into that corner, it's really, really easy to just end up on the slippy stuff. The rubber lines are so much slippier when it's wet. Even though the track dried up, when your tyres start to get colder, it just gets harder and harder to keep it on. So yeah, it's a fun little track. I think it's a great racing track. I think the racing probably would have been closer. Well, definitely would have been closer in the dry, because it's a bit more of a battle of attrition in that.
I'm sure the landscaping crews won't be too upset. They'll always have to have the rain fall down to keep the grass tip-top and healthy around this track, and have it be known that
we get plenty of rain. We'll get plenty of rain. Yeah. It'll be nice, bright and green next time we're out there in the sun.
Plenty of rain and plenty of grass around this racetrack as well. And maybe going to have plenty of rain come time for the next race of the season as we continue on this UK tour here from Season 1 of 2025 for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Going to be running at Alton Park in 1 week's time. So what are your thoughts heading into that race?
Yeah, I love that track. It's my closest to home track. Not that I tend to drive it much in real life, but it's sort of just feels like a home track. I know it pretty well. It is a difficult track. I think it's one of the hardest ones on the calendar because there's so many Just not much margin between, especially places like T1 and some of the corners around the back and the chicanes. It's just a lot of corners where the margin between a fast lap and breaking it or going off track is quite small. So that'll be interesting. But it's a fun track to race on as well.
I gotta see the cream rise to the top come time for that race in 1 week's time. I don't believe that was the right saying at all, but I just coined it on this broadcast, so if anyone would like to use it, you can contact my lawyer. But Ian Schroeder, thanks for joining us here in the commentary booth. And before we let you go and celebrate this win here today at Snetterton, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, thanks to all the drivers, thanks to Stevie, everyone who's organised it, and thanks to you guys. Nice to be able to watch it back.
Thank you as well for joining us in the commentary booth. Ian, well done on the victory here at Snetterton today, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season. Thank you for joining us.
Take care. Thank you. Bye for now.
And that right there was Ian Jr., your winner in Spec 2, and now Adam has Jeff Jacobson.
Speaking of Spec 2, that was definitely the winner in Spec 1, Ron, not Spec 2.
I blame my dyslexia.
Yep, that's okay. That's okay. So, real quickly here, Mr. Jeff Jacobson, you didn't win in Spec 2 today, but you came very close. Second place in Spec 2. And Jeff, I was in a Discord with you earlier before the race started, and you said, what were your words again about not doing great, how you didn't have any practice, and you said this one was going to be a throwaway?
It almost was a throwaway because before halfway through the race, I think I was at 12x and I ended at 17.
Well, it doesn't matter how many X's. Well, it does matter how many X's you get, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter how many X's you got in this one because you didn't go over the limit. So, Jeff, congrats. 17th overall, not the best overall finish we've seen from you this season, but still P2 in class and only 2 positions behind Andrew Love. So you're keeping those points totals close, even if you don't take wins in your class. So you're doing exactly what you have to do, Jeff. Walk us through the rest of the season here. Did you expect to be this quick this season?
I did not. As simple as that.
Okay, that's fair. So what do you do for the rest of the season?
Just keep doing what I'm doing, I guess. It seems to be working, right?
Yeah, it's working great. Speaking of working great, have you gotten any practice yet in the Spec Racer Ford?
I did one official race.
Okay. Are you ready for it?
I think so. I feel a little more confident at Spa than I have the tracks we've been to this week, but that's such a draft-heavy track. It's all might just come down to luck.
I have a sneaky suspicion. You and I both know draft-heavy tracks. I think we both run in a series that relies way too much on draft. You heard it here first. We can see how most of those races end up. So good luck at the Spec Racer Ford race at Spa. It's going to be fun for us up here in the booth. Probably not so much fun for the drivers down there. But one more thing, Jeff, before I let you go, we are going to Olton Park next week. Are you ready for it? Do you have any practice? What's the goal there?
Another track I don't think I'm super great at, so we'll just wait to practice the day of, like I always do.
Yep, I've heard that before, Jeff. Anybody you want to thank or shout out before I let you go?
Nope.
Awesome. All right, sounds good. Yep, that was quick. That was easy. Goodbye, Jeff. We'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.
That was Jeff Jacobson there, not winner of Spec 2. Andrew Love was not in the booth, but we have one more driver that we can get to this afternoon. And Ron, you've got the pleasure now twice in a row of interviewing Jorg Monty, and I'm starting to get a bit jealous here. But Ron, Jorg Monty.
Well, these interviews are always an absolute riot. I gotta say one thing as well. The way that interview with Jeff ended a couple of moments ago was fantastic. Anyone you want to give a thanks or a shout out? Nope. Alrighty, cool. See you next week, Jeff. Anyways, Jorg Monty now joining us in the commentary booth. And now Jorg, grabbing your 3rd victory from this still very early on season. And that looked like a pretty fun one out there, but I will say, based off our interaction at the end of the Formula V broadcast yesterday at New Hampshire, also affected by rain, not too big of a fan of wet weather racing, so I'm sure some mixed emotions after that day.
Yeah. I mean, I told you yesterday already, I hate rain. I still hate it. I simply don't like it. But I knew at the beginning with my qualifying, it's tough to get in front actually, because you need to be very, very careful. And I tried that. I even survived the Daniel attack once, and I'm actually glad for that, but Tord wasn't so lucky. After that, it was just please keep it on track. Don't do stupid things. Just break your normal break zones, and that's what I try to do. And I still had my small excursion on the off track, but they were only small, so it's okay.
Yeah, I gotta say, based off some of the stuff that I've been seeing in some of the chats, I think Daniel Tuss may need some like Secret Service detail heading into the next race of the season at Alton Park. But it's still pretty good race from our perspective in the commentary booth. Looked like it was quite difficult though, trying to manage the varied track conditions. It started off raining, then it kind of the rain stopped, but it looked like the track still was not drying off. I want to ask you about how it's like running a racetrack like this in the pouring rain, because it did not look easy out there at all.
It was absolutely disgusting to drive, actually. One throttle too much, and you start, the backside just comes out, hitting a puddle where you shouldn't hit it. Wide lines that they're slippy as ice. Or like the bomb crater corner there. That's if you go too close to the curb there, you just spin out. It happened several times to other guys, and it was really, really difficult to keep it on track. I still don't know how Ian does it. I think I need to freaking hell do something against that guy next race.
We all want somebody to do something against him. Let's be honest. I mean, he is so fast, Jorg.
I'm trying. If it's dry, I'm definitely going to try.
I will say though, guys, with the alien activity we saw around Rob Johnson getting abducted by a UFO, maybe next time out the UFO is going to try and pick up the alien that is Ian Joyner, because he is being incredibly quick all throughout this season. But who knows? Alton Park in 1 week's time, another old school UK track, maybe going to change the balance of power, so to speak, in this series. So Jorg, I want to ask you about the race at Alton Park in 1 week's time. What are your thoughts heading into it?
It's my favorite track. That's all I need to say. It's absolutely my favorite track in any kind of car. I started racing it in Mazda. I loved it in the Radical SR8, and I still love it. So that's my favorite car. And I think if I got a chance to beat Ian, then it's there.
Yeah, that's going to be a pretty good race. I'm really much so looking forward to that battle that you and him are going to have. That will be a battle of giants. But Jorg Mani, I will let you go and celebrate this Masters win, continuing on the clean sweep thus far this season. After one more question, that being if there's anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out.
I got a shout out for Chef.
Yes.
That's the only one I'm going to shout out today, just for Chef.
Jeff Jacobson gets a shout out after he didn't have anybody to shout out on his own. So thank you so much, Jorg, and we hope to be talking to you again very soon.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
I mean, you couldn't script that any better, Ron.
Yeah, that worked out absolutely beautifully between those two. I gotta say, honestly, in terms of doing these broadcasts, obviously the racing is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but the interviews are just about as entertaining as the racing is as well. Always love having some characters to talk about out there on the track.
We have some upcoming streams, Ron. We're running over, buddy.
Yeah, I think we have a whole lot of stuff coming up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of it. And here is the stuff coming up later on today. We've got the action from the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors running at Spa. That'll be a Draft Fest race if ever you've seen one. This upcoming Wednesday, Wild Wednesday here on SMB. I'm coining that term right now. We got 70 minutes of GT4 action running at Watkins Glen for Group 2 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. And right towards the end of that broadcast, you've also got the action for round number 4 of the Sim Racers Group SRG Intermediate Formula 4 Championship running at Rudskog, and that series kicked off here on SMB a couple of days ago, and I was a part of that broadcast. You were working, the cameras had them, and that was a brilliant race to be a part of, so it gives you more of a reason to tune into that. And this upcoming weekend here from the Formula Ford, Spec Racer Ford, and Formula V Weekend Warriors, we've got the action with the Formula Fords running at Alton Park, the Formula Vs running at Okayama, and the Spec Racer Fords running at Zolder. So if that doesn't give you a reason to subscribe here to Slow Motion Broadcasting, I really don't know what does. But I think for this broadcast, for round number 3 of this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season, that will just about do it. And so for myself, Ron Maunz, Adam Thompson joining me working the comms and the cams, and Jeff Jacobson, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too far off future.